Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Ascending with Ashley. I'm Ashley. I just cleaned my glasses and there's already a smudge. Anyway. This is a collective reading, a collective check-in. We're going to use Yin Yang. Let's use Yin Yang for like, I don't know, eight energies or so. And then we'll go ahead and pull from the Sacred Rebels. And maybe the Fortune. Alright? Let's do it. Alright, I'm gonna give these 2 shuffles and then we'll shuffle and let them come out. Like my shirt? I do too. I also have these really cute earrings. I'll show you. The guillotine. Anyway. Remember, all power to the people, regardless of what energy you're experiencing. 6:29. It's Friday, I think. Confirmation. Just kidding. The trains always go by. Okay. We have reflection, projections, nurture, compassion, and trust in divine timing. We have attraction, hot, and Mars, summer, and growth. We have ego, vanity, and pride. Definitely part of that projection and reflection card energy. Remember, cards are just tools to help us get an insight. It's not that big of a deal. Control tactics. I'm not taking this. Okay, I'll take this. Alright. Got deception and temptation at the bottom of the deck. I'm not pulling it because we're always tempted by shit. I can't. I just cleaned you. We've got Everything's Magic by Angels and Airwaves. Alright, I'm not going to be putting these in the order I pulled them. I'm going to be putting them in the problematic to solution order. Okay? And then we'll go through it. We also got Higher Self-Activation, North Node Cosmic Purpose, and Ancestor Guides. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. I need 4 more because I can't do... I know I said 8 altogether, but we're going to do 12. Go with the flow. Don't get in your own way by like making up made up shit and like policing yourself. Party external peeped out. Give me one at a time. Should we take them? Take those. Alright. I got fate, divine intervention, and confusion and illusions. Alright, so we've got 5. For those of you who like to quantify, we've got 5 seamless shadow or slightly things we need to be careful navigating energies, and then the rest of the is the guidance. So here we go. Thank you for being here. All right, reflections and projections. as we say all the time, a lot of the things that we project onto others or someone projects onto us is the things that we haven't really acknowledged about our own selves, right? So when you get to a place of healing, you kind of become a mirror. And by kind of become, I mean you absolutely become a mirror for others. You reflect back, or if someone's doing this for you, we reflect each other's shadows. I have this tendency to believe that people along my path, I think we're all teachers and students for each other, and we're all at varying parts, right? So, like, even if you feel like you're, in a hierarchy or more well established than others, or, things that speak to vanity and pride and your ego, right? Like, I'm above that, or that doesn't affect me. I think that then we're offered alternatives to that belief by being confronted with people on the path. I had an issue yesterday. It wasn't an issue. I had a experience with this guy, and we're cool. And we were talking about, we talk about taboo topics, which I don't know if we're going to do that anymore. But there was something that I said, and he was very put off by it. And kind of demeaning to me, which he's never shown that behavior to me. And so I was like, what's happening here? I triggered him. Because he's like, that doesn't make any sense. And he just kept saying that. And I'm like, okay, for you, but it's like my truth, And so it was like, after the second time he said that doesn't make any sense, I'm like, we're just gonna have to agree to disagree. And he was like, yeah, we do that. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I think we should change the subject. At this point in time, I don't think there's a way that we're gonna find understanding here. And so then I was reflecting on it because it triggered me in the sense that I was like, why am I was very put off by his response to me, because again, it was a little bit disrespectful, but I understood that I triggered him. So that was his ego being disrespectful to me, trying to put me in my place, right? And I was like, I was trying really hard to like breathe through it, and I'm like, I'm not trying to be bothered by this, and I recognized it for what it was in the time, but it's taken a lot of work to get to that point when there is conflict with another, and I stay by myself. So when when I am around people and conflict arises, I'm like, okay, what do I have to learn here? And I had to learn yesterday that, we don't need to have conversations like that to that depth in passing with people. And I think that, the conversation, I mean, he was already triggered because he brought up the thing about me being in community is that people share very deep things with me because I provide an energy of safety. And so he had shared, 3 minutes earlier, some very, very traumatic things about his experiences. And so when the next topic came up and he wasn't able to receive it, I recognized that as, okay, we're in fight or flight right now. His nervous system is in a space of not accepting what I'm saying because he's not healed from this experience, and right now he's in a fight or flight, his nervous system, and I was like, this isn't even why we're here. Like, we weren't even there to like have this conversation. It just, it flowed through. So all that to say is, when we experience things that make us feel uncomfortable, bring up situations, make us remember. Part of the reason I do all this work on here is so that when we are triggered, we can recognize it as a trigger and not as like a character flaw in the person reflecting it back to us. And we're cool. I think that I recognized it as he was uncomfortable, but he didn't say that, you know. Um, but I think that his inner child was probably like screaming and yelling within him. And there was a lot of shame present in the conversation. And again, we weren't there for that, right? It came up. So I recognize that as him. And all I can do is recognize that and be like, I hope that you can heal. And I also recognized myself as being very I'm very stern in my beliefs, and I'm not going to, I mean, there was a religious aspect here, and I don't identify with religion, and he does. And so that's the thing. I was like, you know, I did all of this of like, okay, he's coming from this like Christian point of view, which I've, you know, long deconstructed and decolonized from. And so I recognized it as like, he has inner child healing to do, he has decolonizing to do. And that's not my responsibility, but I did trigger that. And also, I don't allow disrespect. And a lot of the times when I am in situations with masculine people or men, I am in my masculine energy. But when I start to be disrespected like I'm one of the dudes, I flip to my feminine energy and demand respect. And that was the situation yesterday. And there were some other things, like underhanded comments that he made about like my mothering and stuff, and I was like, no. Like, just because you're triggered doesn't mean you're gonna do that. So anyway, that was what I wanted to share about that. I think that speaks to control tactics as well, and sometimes confusion within that, because when people trigger us or reflect back to us or present us with, you know, an idea that gives us that cognitive dissonance, which is that, you know, when you're presented with a belief that doesn't align with your, you know, core beliefs, there's resistance, right? There's confusion, there's a whole lot of shit, and I recognize that because of where I'm at in my life and the work I do, obviously. But most people don't have a conscious awareness of that. So when you are getting into like an interpersonal heated situation, my recommendation, you know, this does say attraction, but I think this, with this Mars energy, this hot could also go to like, you know, seeing red, to anger, to that extreme as well, right? The attraction piece is like when you're balanced within that, but the alternative is also like hot-headed, quick and fast, easy to hurt, right, others. And I think when we recognize that people are triggered, we don't need to, you know, we can allow grace, right? And we don't need to call them out on it, but we can just, the point of all of this healing and integrating your own shadow is that when situations like what I just shared arise, you recognize it for what it is, as unhealed parts of them that are feeling triggered. It doesn't have anything to do with me, and that's why when there was something said about, you know, my dynamic with Niall, I was like, no. You're not gonna shit on me because you feel a certain way about a conversation that had nothing to do with my child. No, we're not doing that. And that's the projection piece. That's what people do. Hurt people, right? And again, that's that little child having a tantrum, being like, why didn't anyone save me from this situation? Why didn't anyone listen to me? A lot of that is just like a tantrum happening within them, right? I get it. But that doesn't mean we're gonna excuse it. And I myself have those moments as well, okay? And that speaks to growth, right? Recognizing these patterns and behaviors and aspects that we all have. And, you know, I think once we get to a common understanding of like, we've all been hurt in different ways, not only by our families or our friends or interpersonal relationships, but also what I mentioned, there was we were having a conversation about religion. and abuse within the church, right? Before the other conversation happened. And he shared stuff like very, like, it made me go like this when he was sharing. I was like, dude, you know? But it was something that came through him because it needed to be witnessed. And I was, you know, and I do that for folks, right? That's part of my job as a healer, is to hold space, create space for people to feel safe. And I feel like if we all had that ability to have empathy, I've been saying this a long time, the world would be a much better place. So now let's talk about the divinity that is the second row of this reading. Nurture and compassion. I think that's ultimately what it is. When there are a lot of projections happening, both people are going to be triggered. That's why it's important to heal, because then it's going to be like a battle of wits, a pissing contest, the ego, And I think once we have our own idea, and when we've done our own inventory, we understand how darkness affects others, and we're able to, really work from this place of higher self and be like, I see you, I get you, and also, that stops here. Like, I'm not gonna let you, put any cycles on me because you're unhealed at this point, right? For some of you, if this is resonating, part of this being a healer could be part of your purpose. Maybe what I'm sharing has happened to you a lot, and like, you are often someone that people trust. Like, we had a doctor's appointment on Wednesday, and this was like our fourth time meeting with this woman. And at first I was very resistant to her because she was pushing public school on Niall, and I was like, no, that's not for us. We're not doing that. And she backed off, and she started to respect me. And then we had 2 telehealth appointments, and I showed her Niall's environment. And she has talked to the social worker at the clinic about the work I'm doing with Niall. And the social worker was like, well, the schools would never do any of that, Like, she's seen our yard, she's seen his music studio, she's seen his emotion space. And she acknowledged my work as a mother on Wednesday. So when Dude said something about my mothering, I had been very much validated in a system that I fucking hate. And anyway, we shared our birth stories with each other, which I don't usually share my birth story in a medicalized setting, but we've built this rapport, and she shared hers. And that's not common. And as a healer, I told her that because she's like, I never share personal information. We talked about our placentas together. And I said, Diana, I believe that, every conversation happens for a reason. And I'm like, I think that a lot of we as women, as sisterhood, there isn't space for us to have these conversations. And so I do really appreciate you sharing, and I appreciate you giving me the space to share, because again, it's a story 5 years ago, so at this point in time there's not really a danger aspect around it of like negligence and other narratives that this system would put on us for having that free birth experience. But all that to say is, when you meet people where they're at, it can be really fucking beautiful, and it can really blossom into, a beautiful relationship. Like I said, we really butted heads initially about a few different things, but now she understands my side of things and why I move the way I do, and she respects it, which makes me feel really safe continuing to get Niall the services he needs, because for a long time I haven't wanted to be a part of this system, but I feel safe, and I feel a good friendship growing, right? It's more than an acquaintance now, because we've both let our walls down and shared a very natural human experience with each other. We talked about our fears and birth and our birth plans, and I showed her the picture that we took first thing when Niall was born, and she called me a badass, and then she was like, oh, I didn't swear, and I was like, I always swear. It's like, so if you are a person who's often getting information about people, or they feel safe. It's a really important person to be in this world at this time. And that's why I shared all that, because I prefer to be alone. But when I've been interacting with people lately, it's been very reciprocal, very sweet. I had 2 very sweet reciprocal conversations yesterday as well. And I feel like we're all seeking that so much. We've all been disconnected. And that, that's the slogan of this channel: reconnection through healing, right? Reconnection to self, the natural world, and the collective. And that's this process that we're talking about right here. I mean, we have to get to a certain point of healed versions within us, both our higher selves, our inner child, which isn't here, but we always talk about it. Having that nurture and compassion for ourselves, and being able to see that reflection in others to offer empathy, is the reason we're here, in my opinion. At this point in time, fuck yeah. We're being guided by our ancestors. We all have the ability to alchemize and have these conversations with each other, right? And then we have divine time, trusting in divine time, and we have fate and divine intervention and detours. So all I will say is that I would really, if you're watching this, thank you for listening to my experiences. I hope that brought resonance to things that you've experienced. That's the reason I shared it. But I know I'm a yapper. But I feel like if you're here watching this at this time, the divinity that is on this table is immaculate. Like, I think these are all the divine cards: cosmic purpose, higher self, ancestor guides, divine timing, fate intervention, and nurture and compassion. So like, if you get to a point of feeling like other people's energy is too much, pull back. It's okay to pull back. It's okay to set boundaries. In fact, it's not even just okay. It's absolutely imperative for your health, through growth and healing, to do that. I want to pull a few from the Sacred Rebels too. What am I going to call this? But yeah, I think recognizing when people are trying to have control over you, when they're in their ego, if they're causing you confusion, all of that are just have the empathy to recognize, and the common sense to recognize, that serenity to recognize that those are just projections. And yes, while people are projecting onto you, also recognize that you're there to receive it, because it's a lesson of growth for you as well. Nobody's bad or good in this situation. It just is what it is. And, it's like watering a seed. There's growth to be had. Listening for the truth. I hope in both of those stories I shared, you kind of picked up on that. Like, I knew that I was there to receive something as well, while also offering the understanding and compassion for what was going on within the other people, right? Heaven sent. If this is your path, I think this is for healers, specifically, because I think we are put in people's paths to receive that, especially once we've reached a certain level of healing. I'm not saying we're better than anyone, but if they're reflecting harm or hurt onto us, and we reflect back, empathy, compassion, understanding, unconditional love, that's going to stop them in their tracks, because they're expecting us to meet them with what they're giving us, which is ego. And so being heaven sent, maybe this is another reading for the Earth Angels. It really feels like it. Our life, I've gotten to this point where I'm so guided by all of these energies to be like, to trust when I'm being told to go somewhere, even if it's like, go through the Dairy Queen drive-thru right now. I've gotten to that point, and I have enough privilege and freedom in my time to be able to take direction and do so. the power of attraction. You show up when you are, we become magnetized to situations. And as healers, a lot of the times we are magnetized to a lot of very low vibrational entities because, again, we're providing that trust back into the divine for them. Which is why yesterday when the conversation got very heated in religion, I had to stop it. Because we've already talked about my beliefs. He knows I'm not a Christian. He knows I'm not religion. He knows I am a pagan. He knows that I do energy healing. And so I'm like, I'm not gonna, just because it doesn't make sense to you within your frame of reference, doesn't mean that it's not my truth, right? And I'm not having a conflict right now. I'm not trying to be in, if you're dedicated to misunderstanding what I'm saying, or if you're not able to understand what I'm saying from your perspective and point of view, then we don't need to keep talking about it. That's fine. Let's change the subject now, because I don't want us to be, I don't want us to have conflict. That's not the point of the conversation. The point is to find common ground. And recognize that you are a sacred fool. And the Fool card is all about, taking a leap of faith, taking chances. So what I just said, being heaven sent as the sacred fool, being in spaces that others really need to witness humanity, faith, compassion, the good stuff, because there's so, as a society, globally, we've all been bogged down so much by terror, evil, right? So when people do come across people with, their hearts intact, people who are healed, it serves as this reminder of what's possible. And that's our job, to help support humanity. Wish your heart's desire is ready to come true. Thanks for being here. I know this is a little bit of a longer reading, but I think that real world examples in everyday life are very important when we're talking about these things. Plane, a journey is indicated either physically or metaphorically. Your life will become more full. So remember to also, I'm also getting plane of existence with this plane. So as you heal and awaken, you're probably going to have aspects, birth, rebirth. You're going to be able to have access to higher realms or certain gifts that are not based in the 3D, especially with all of the divinity cards here, the cosmic purpose, higher self. As you activate your higher self, you're able to transmute energy, and that's our job. We magnetize bullshit and hold a mirror to the people in front of us giving it to us, which is this ego card. But we don't do it out of ego, because we've healed our ego. We do it out of a place of love, compassion, and nurture. And yeah, when people are triggered, they're mad, right? We already talked about that with the Mars energy. And that's where boundaries come in, okay? We're not trying to control them. And I think that's the thing. People feel like others are trying to control them when they don't agree, or when there's a disagreement of some sort, because that has been used in the past. And we can, again, offer empathy and understanding around that, okay? Birth, universal energy brings you opportunity and possibility. So we're going to see that as a rebirth in this. And last but not least, the world. Be open to new possibilities in all areas of your life.
That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger.
And trust Grainger, I guess. Edging by Blink-182. Alright, I hope this helps. Step into your purpose. If this was resonating a little bit, but you're not quite there, go check out some of the What's Your Calling readings that can give you some more insight on, there's a playlist called about What's Your Callings that can give you some insight on what, certain things you may resonate with, or certain things that you can reconnect with, And check out some of the other collective readings. If you are feeling alone, there's a lot of stuff about this path and taking the path less traveled and ways to deal with that. But ultimately, just remember that we're all a bunch of little kids who have had trauma. And I think once you really recognize how projections and reflections work when you're interacting with others, you can really get out of your ego, and it's not a personal issue. It's a recognition of hurt, and we offer compassion and space for that if we're able to. So heal yourself so you can do that. Have a good one. Love you.